Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm the City Witch. Before we jump into the video, I just want to thank my student for buying me this funky witch's hat as an investment to my channel and to my business. So the student in question, I'm not going to name them because they've asked me not to, but they didn't think I was going to wear it and they thought I'd look really funny wearing it online, but I think they're wrong. I think I look awesome. So this is going to be in future videos, guys. So yeah, what do you think? Do you like my new witch's hat or what? Do I look cool? Do I look funny? You let me know in the comments. So today's video is going to be on the magical art of circle casting, and it's just going to be a basic introduction video to give you some ideas on how to utilise circles in your craft and consider using them. Now the reason I wanted to do this video is because a lot of my students lately have been telling me that they don't bother casting a circle, that they don't utilise that skill anymore, and actually I'm getting comments like it's outdated, not needed anymore, not necessary, and that makes me so sad, guys. Circle casting was something that I got into at quite an early age in my craft, and it was something that was drummed into me by a lot of my mentors when I had them in the first coven that I was in. And I think it is a really important skill to have, and one of my worries is that it's going to become a dying art and we're just not going to bother with it anymore. There's a lot of different magical practices and paths out there which, you know, fantastically allow us to be very versatile, utilise what we have on hand, and not need to use all these fantastical magical tools. Now, when I was taught, it was the complete opposite. You needed these tools to help discipline and help you practice and nurture your skill and recognise what the energies represented, and you didn't cast any spells or do any rituals or ceremonies until you'd really dedicated yourself and you understood the fundamentals of what you're doing before they would allow you to do active magic. So that was really important. But obviously these days there's a lot of different solitary practitioners out there, and there's a lot of access to information online, a lot of groups on Facebook and all sorts of different apps and websites that you can join, and there's a lot of people giving away free information, which is fantastic because it means you've got access to knowledge all around the world, and obviously the skills and the knowledge of all those practitioners that have been at it a lot longer than perhaps you have, which is great. But the downside to this is a lot of these practitioners now, they don't have structure to the craft anymore, or they're stepping away from that more structured technique of the craft. And circle casting is one of those structured techniques which is fallen on the wayside, and to be honest it's a crying shame that it's dying out, and I really want to rescue it. So I'm doing this video in hopes that I can rekindle your interest in circle casting and hopefully get you to give it a go. And I'm going to talk to you about the basics, and if you're interested enough in this video, you enjoyed it, guys, leave me a comment and I can give you a much more detailed video at a later date and even show you how to cast circles and demonstrate how I do mine. So just leave those comments below, guys. So the very first thing that I want to touch on is what is a circle. So a circle in a nutshell is a magical barrier that protects you during your spell casting, ceremonies and ritualistic work. A circle offers a selected space in your home or environment that you dedicate and carve out and honour the deities and the energies that you're working with. So automatically when you cast a circle, the belief is that that circle separates that space that you've closed that circle within away from the mundane and puts it onto a spiritual plane of existence. So you bridge the gap between the mundane and the spiritual by casting a circle. That was the belief behind a circle. Now, just to give you a little bit of a history lesson on circle casting is very old and doesn't really belong to any one particular culture. Now, my research and my own knowledge on this took me way back to Babylonians. So the Babylonians were one of the first people to utilise magical spellcasting and circles and combine the two. This also translated into the Middle Ages and when magicians would start to use it. So in the Middle Ages, magicians would be incorporated into court life, and they were advisors to kings and queens, and they were often used to offer spiritual counsel and advice. And whenever they would do something ritualistically, they would always incorporate a circle. That later started to, you know, get assimilated into lots of different cultures. So all around the world, if you research it, there is the magical art of circle casting. And obviously, eventually down the line, that led to being incorporated into witchcraft, magical practice, and also different religious aspects of witchcraft as well, like Wicca and paganism and Alexandrian path, Gardanian. All of them have elements of magical circle casting. So do you need a magical circle? I really want to say yes, but the true answer is no. You don't absolutely have to have a circle, and I do think that everything in your craft and everything in your path should resonate with you. So if circle casting really does not resonate with you, then I would not advise you to do it, because you're just incorporating something into a step, into your life, into your magical practice that you're just going to hate, and eventually, you know, it's going to seep into the rest of your craft and it's not going to make you very happy. So I don't believe in doing it if you don't want to. But what I'm hoping to do, as I say, is to give you the information that will hopefully make you think, okay, circle casting is important or necessary, or maybe I should really look into this, or at least try it and see what I think. So that's what I want to do, is give you the tools for that. So my answer to this question, personally, is a yes. I do believe circle casting is necessary and absolutely needed. And there's a few reasons for that. So as I mentioned in the first one, what is a circle? Circle casting offers a magical barrier between the mundane and the magical, and helps dedicate a certain space in your environment to what you're about to do, making it a space of magic, enchantment and excitement and fantasy. So something really magical and unique. That's not all it does though. A magical barrier, a circle, offers you a form of protection. So when you cast a magic circle, think about logically all the energies that are possibly in your environment. This is why it's super important to cleanse as a step, but also your magical barrier, if you cast it and you don't remove it, you're trapping all those energies in, and if you don't cast it, all those energies can travel in and out of the space you're working with. It doesn't matter if you cleanse that little bit of a space. What's happening is, you know, you've cleansed that space, and yes, it's cleansed at that moment, but energy moves, it travels, and that's something you need to think about. It's always moving, it's always travelling, it's always bouncing off of things, and especially the mirrors in a room, that's reflective and deflective, so obviously it makes things move in a room, and obviously, as we know, energy can seep into just about anything and come in any form. So that's just one way that energy can affect your space. Another way is obviously outside forces, so other magical practitioners working against you, or the magic travelling through your space at the time. Then there's paranormal issues, so you're talking about ghosts and poltergeists and spirits. Then there's entities, demonic forces, negative spell casting, negativity in general, positive and negative ions in the environment you're in having impact. So there's all of these different things to consider. Now, when you cast a magic circle, it offers a barrier to all of that. So once you cast your circle, there's a couple of things you do at that point. The first thing is you would cleanse the space within it, so that space becomes magically bleached, and then you summon into that circle everything to keep it nice and clear and positive, and all the energies you wish to work with are confined in that space, but all the energies you do not wish to work with are banished out of that space and cannot cross that magical threshold that you have cast. So straight away, your space is truly magical and set and ready to go, but the outside forces can't come in and interfere. So that is my personal belief on why I think that the magical circle is really super important and necessary, and really something you should consider, guys. It's definitely something that I utilise in my craft all the time. Now, I do want to make a disclaimer here. Now, I'm not saying that I cast a circle for absolutely every little thing I do magically. That would be silly and ridiculous and way too far-fetched. But what I am saying is, if I'm going to go out of my way to map out when I want to do a certain spell, ritual or ceremony, and I'm going to go and put in all the effort and the time to, you know, pick the right date, the right moon phase, the right astrological sign, or the planet, or the day, and I'm going to collect all my tools, cleanse everything, prep everything, get the spell ready, the space ready, meditate, cleanse myself, have a ritualistic bath or shower perhaps, and then put on nice clean plain clothing to do the ritual, and then I don't cast a circle, and then all these outside horrible forces mess with it. What was the point in going through all of that only to miss that one fundamental step that could have helped me and could have kept all my magic and my working completely safe from outside influence? That's what I'm trying to get you to think about a little bit here, guys. Is I'm not going to go to all that trouble to do all of that and then have it messed up by other people or other energies or things that are outside of my control. What I want to do is do as much as possible to make sure that what I'm working on is going to work, and it's going to manifest, and it's going to be successful, and it's going to help me, not hinder me. So that is the reason that I use a circle. But by no means do I cast a circle for every little thing. So if I'm, you know, let's say, for example, with my dad, and he's trying to find a car park space and he can't find one, I'm not going to cast a circle to do a quick car park charm to find us a car park space. I'm probably just going to envision that I'm surrounded by a bubble of light or something, and just quickly envision that, rather than actually go out of my way to cast a full circle and call in all the quarters just to do a little charm on the spot. But I still envision something that protects me and what I'm doing, and I still picture a white light that kind of cleanses the little bit of the space that I'm in, even if it's that small bubble inside a car. So I still in some way incorporate that step, but I don't go as far as casting a full circle and calling in all the quarters just to do a little charm. If you have the time and you're putting the energy and you're disciplining yourself to map out and plan all your spells, then I definitely would recommend incorporating the Magick Circle into that, because it's a step that you're going to find is going to make sure that your spells are more successful, and you will see a great improvement, I promise. Just give it a go. Just for me, give it a go. So let's talk about the different types of circles. So another question I get asked is, are there different types of circles? And the answer is absolutely yes. There are probably hundreds of different types of circles out there, guys. Way too many to list here, so I'm just going to talk to you about the main ones. So, as I've mentioned before, the ancient Babylonians were some of the first people that started utilising the magical circle, and it's called a magical circle, but actually it can be any shape and any size. It doesn't actually have to be a circle. It can be a triangle, a square, a star. It can be, just about anything, and there's so many different types out there, and there's so many different ways of circle casting. Now, I'm not going to try and dwell too much on all the different methods, but I'm going to walk you through one of my basic methods, and then later on I might do another video more in depth on some of the other methods and some of the more occult styles that you can consider doing. But for now, I just want to give you the basics. So, different types of circles. So as I mentioned, a circle doesn't have to be a circle. But obviously the first thing you're going to think of is a circle because of the term circle casting. So therefore I'm going to talk to you about that one first. So, different types of styles of circle casting that you can use. So the circle. The circle represents the cycle of life, balance in nature, the infinite, the spiritual, and change. So you can see why that's the most popular style straight away, because change obviously is something we want to create. It's something that we're working towards with our spells and our rituals. Obviously the circle is great for representing balance, the cycle of life, energy. So life, birth, death, rebirth, all those kinds of cycles are incorporated in that, and that's a lot of the different areas of the craft that we work in, and it's straight away the most obvious type of circle that you might want to cast. Let's look at some of the others. Let's look at the square for a moment. The square represents structure, development, commitment, containment, manifestation, and transference. So again, different to the circle, but very interesting symbolism there straight away. Traditionally, a square would be used for instances where you want to work with other entities or other beings, and this is in a way where you would actually invoke them into the circle. I'll talk at a later date about the difference between invocation and invocation, just so you know the differences, but invoking means when you're bringing something into your space and calling it in some kind of spiritual astral form to aid you. So the square traditionally is used for summoning in those things and working with them, and also because the square represents containment, what it does is it actually kind of disempowers them a little bit so that you have control over them. So if you're working with forces that you're unsure of or are more powerful than you, or you perceive them to be more powerful and you're concerned about that, the square is a good way to actually control them, and you can actually use the square as a smaller kind of space within your circle, and then a bigger circle that you can walk amongst but not touch the square. So you call the being into the square and commune with it and work with it, but then you can also release it safely from that space, but it doesn't enter the bit that you can walk around, so you're completely secure and safe. And that's actually a very common way to use a circle if you're going to work with other entities. Let's look at the triangle. The triangle represents manifestation, dimensional gateways. It's used in summoning and astral travel, and it's used in divination and knowledge. So again, this is another one that's used for summoning, but this one in particular is most commonly found when you're actually trying to disempower evil demonic entities. So it's used a lot in demonic removal, poltergeist removal, entity removal, to work healing on scarred properties, to remove echoes and sort of patterns of the past, and it's used a lot for people like me who work in demonology and removing all of those negative energies from people's homes and rebalancing the energy and bringing in more positive energies after we've removed the negative. So the triangle is one of the most common ways to do that, and if you follow me on my Instagram as well, you will have seen some of the circles and some of the occult patterns and designs that I use when I'm removing entities or curses or hexes on people, and they're very common, and triangles are some of the ones that I use, and you will see that on there if you want to take a look. Next one is a more common symbol as well. It's the square within a circle. So again, this can be the other way around. So it could be a circle within a square, it could be a triangle within a square, it could be a triangle within a circle within a triangle. All of these symbols are kind of interchangeable and can be cast as such as well. But one of the most common ones is the square within the circle, and this represents multiplication, so it doubles up the energies that you call upon, making your circle more powerful. It offers wisdom, so it's all about learning and understanding. So if you're working with knowledge and information or discovery, so it's good for truth magic, it's good for discovering something that's happened, looking into past events, and it's good for fortune telling, and it's good for working with tarot and things like that. Also represents understanding, control, discipline and stability. So there's a number of different energies there which straight away are different to working with the triangle, the square and the circle. Another one you can possibly consider is the pentagram. So the pentagram represents, as we know, the 5 elements of earth, air, fire, water, and of course spirit. And then it represents the divine, the cosmic forces, and universal power. So depending on what you want to do, you can cast the pentagram as a pentagram, or you can cast it as a pentacle. So then it would be the start within a circle, and obviously the circle would be your main containment, but the pentagram would be the energies and the forces you summon in. So think about this a little bit logically. So choose the type of circle that matches whatever spell working you're going to do. So if I'm personally going to work with astral travel, astral projection, summoning, or I'm going to work divination, especially when I'm working with my black mirror, I always cast a triangle. Triangle's perfect for divination, really good for interdimensional travel. Astral travel quite traditionally is, we use black mirrors for that. So you would send your spirit through the black mirror, which acts as a gateway, and obviously as we know, triangles represent dimensional gateways, so already you're layering in magic. So then you'd go through that mirror astrally, and then you would go to other planes of existence, or you would meet your spirit guides and your ancestors, your guides, guardians, angels, you name it. That is a way to do it. So if you're not quite that advanced to do that yet, that's fine guys, and I can do a video on that, so again, leave comments below. But that is the reason I would personally choose to use the triangle. If I was going to work with a force that I've not worked with before, I would definitely use the square, because as I say, it's about containment and disempowerment. So even though it is about development and it's about manifestation and transference, it's also about control. So you can obviously control the situation, and you can obviously learn from that and experiment a little bit in a safe environment. But the most common one, as I say, is just to cast a circle. But again, feel free to layer. So if you want to cast a circle because that makes you feel safe, you can then cast a triangle within that. So you know, you cast your triangle in like the center of the space, or perhaps draw it in chalk if you're lucky enough to have a wood floor, and then cast your circle around that, so you know you're magically safe and no outside forces can mess with you. But the thing or the energies you want to work with are trapped within that inner triangle or square or circle or whatever it is you're using as that symbol, and you know you're safe and you can still work around your space without interfering with that. So that's another very traditional way. Now there is a modern way to cast a circle, and that's by utilising really interesting shapes and symbols that we know and love. So an obvious one is if you want to work with love and you want to cast a love spell, rather than cast a circle, cast a heart. And I know that sounds a little bit silly, but actually a lot of more modern witchy books, especially on specific subjects like love, are starting to talk about casting a love circle. So you can envision things like a heart, or draw a heart as your circle. You can actually incorporate the elements as well. So as we know, there are triangles that represent the elements, and you can actually utilise the elements in your craft by drawing that triangle inside a circle to represent an element, and only evoke that one element into that space, making it the master energy in that space that you want to work with. So that's another way to think about casting a circle. Another thing that you can consider doing is drawing, say, a labyrinth, and then you can walk the labyrinth. You could do a spiral, and the spiral represents universal energy and actually travelling within yourself and contacting your higher beings. So that's another one you can do. You could do the tree of life, you could do the flower of life, you could do draconic symbols. There's literally the world is your oyster. As long as you can envision it and think about it and recognise what that symbol means, you can incorporate it into a circle. And again, circle doesn't have to be a circle, so do whatever you feel is right. As long as you can draw it, you can cast it. Now let's talk a little bit about casting. So if you want to cast any of these, you're obviously going to need to know how to do it. So the same way as you would use a tool is the same way that you would actually cast. So you would open up all your chakras, pull up your energy on your inside, and you would travel that energy through your arm into the tool that you're using, or just your hand. So you can point and use your power hand. So for those of you who haven't watched any of my other videos, your power hand is the hand you write with. So for me, that is my right hand. If you can write with both hands, so you know, I forget what the word is, I think it's ambidextrous, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but if you can use both hands, think about which hand you use the most, and that's your dominant hand, so that's the one you would write with, so therefore that's your magical power hand. And then the other one is your receiving hand by default. So your power hand is the one you would use, or you'd hold your tool in and you point and direct energy. Now you can use a number of tools for this. You can use a crystal, you can use a wand, an atham, a sword, or a staff. So that's straight away a massive collection of different tools that you can use, or as I say, you can use your power hand and just point. It's up to you. So I personally like to use my atham or my wand. They're my favourite go-to tools. But the main tool, as I say, is an atham or a wand. So I would hold my atham or wand and I would, as I say, concentrate, pooling my energy and start to travel that down to my hand, where I'm obviously going to concentrate and push that out of the item and start directing it into what I want it to do. So as I do this, I'm visualising. So I'm visualising the energy that I want the circle to be. So if I'm casting for love and I'm going to be drawing a heart, I might picture that the energy is pink, or maybe vibrant red for passion and lust and desire. So think about the energies you want to incorporate, and also colours as well. Colours are easy to visualise and something that you could do very easily, so I definitely recommend thinking about visualising some colours for your magic. So let's concentrate on love for now. So I'm going to draw a heart and I'm going to concentrate and think about that being a red colour. So I'm going to envision my energy coming out of my hand and being red, and I'm going to be shooting that energy into the ground. So I point my tool slightly down, and how I like to do it is I like to walk in a little tight circle, pointing while drawing my particular pattern or shape that I've chosen. Now some practitioners like to walk the circle, so actually walk the shape and be the energy rather than point, so that as they walk, their footsteps is actually leaving the energy in the ground. Some people like to envision it, so they don't actually move, they stand within a space and envision and push out their energy and see the symbol in their mind's eye come to life, and then imbue it with that energy. And that might be that it starts off dull, and like a fluorescent light, you switch it on and it just flares to life. Some people like to envision a cone of power or white energy encasing them or covering their space. All of these methods are completely fine. Some people sing, some people chant. It completely depends what you prefer, guys. So discover the method that you like. My personal favourite, as I say, is I like to turn in a tight circle while standing in the middle of my space, and I use an item to point, and then I turn. I always turn clockwise as well. That's an important thing to note, guys. Start casting a circle clockwise. I always start in the north because the north is the power element, and I end at the north, and then when I end, I lock my circle with a seal. Now, there are a number of ways to do that, some which is clap, some click, some say an incantation, some draw a symbol or a sign, or they draw a sigil, which is derived from the magical name or the actual name, which is they see as the lock. Now, personally, how I like to lock the circle is I draw a pentagram, which is the invoking one, so as if facing me, I would go like that, and when I'm unlocking it, I go the other way, so it would be like that. So that is my lock and unlock, and that is how I like to do it. Sometimes I throw on my own personal sigil on top of that as well when I'm locking it, just as a double layer, but it is completely up to you. You don't necessarily have to do that if you don't want to. Once you've discovered your lock and your technique, and you know what makes you feel comfortable when you're circle casting, the next thing you're going to want to consider doing is obviously invoking all of those energies into it. Now, straight away, what I do at this point is I like to cleanse the space first. I like to make sure that all the energies that are within that space are pure, clear, and what I want to work with. So I'll spiritually bleach the environment. So how I do that is I'll use sage, Polysantos, or I will use some incense, and I will remove all the energies I don't want, expelling them or destroying them in the space. Then I also take a moment to centre myself and make sure that I'm cleansed, so I take a moment to do that. Once I've done that, I then move on to bringing in the energies I do want to work with. Now, some witches do this the other way around. Some witches will bring in the energies that they want to work with in that space and ask them to remove ones that they don't and then cast while that's happening. That is fine. There's no right or wrong here, guys, but my personal method is I like to cast so I know that I'm safe, then call in the energies and invite them once I know the space is cleansed from within. That's how I like to do it. Once I've called in the energies, I then look at the next step of energies I want to work with, which is the deities. Once I've called in them or, invoked the certain energies I want to work with, that's when I work whatever I'm there to do. So whether it be a ritual, a spell, or a ceremony. Once I've done all that, I then do everything in reverse. So I will thank all the energies that I worked with and summon to my space, whether that be, gods or personal guardians or energies that I work with. I always make a dedication to them as well, or promise to do something, because, I'm not that magical practitioner that takes and doesn't give back. I like balance. Once I've done that, I thank them and release them, and that's sort of their permission to leave the circle, as it were. Then I do everything in reverse, so I will go to the last element that I summoned in, which would be the west, which is water, and I will thank that element, release it, and then I will go counterclockwise around the circle until I end back at the north. Once I've ended back at the north, that's when I will unlock, so as I say, going that way, unlock it. Then I will point my tool at the ground and I will start to call back the energy that I cast to bring in all of the energies that I wanted. So I sort of suck all that energy back into myself, I suppose. And as I'm doing that again, choose whatever method that you like, guys, that resonates with you. For me, as I say, I like to turn in a tight circle, so I will do that going counterclockwise. And when I end back at the north, I then will say my favourite statement, which is that I will call the power back into my hand, grounding all remaining energy into the land. Then I point my item high to the sky and say power high to the sky, and then I point it to the ground and say power down to the ground. And as I do that, I physically touch the ground, and what I'm saying there is I've powered high and I've done my job, but now I'm powering down to the ground and grounding all the energy. And by touching the physical earth, any remaining residual forces in my space is going into the earth to be grounded and neutralised, so it can't harm or remain and stay stagnant or get stuck in my space. And that's why I do that. So that's quite an important step as well, I think, with circle casting. Once I've done that, I tend to take a moment to ground. I might eat a biscuit or have a drink, because witches tend to deplete their magical energy if they, don't eat some sugar. I don't know who else has noticed that, but I've noticed that quite a bit over the years. So I always tend to have a biscuit on hand, or a cake, or a sweet, or a piece of chocolate or something that I can just have to ground and stabilise myself. I have a quick drink, take a moment to stabilise, shut down my chakras and feel more like myself. So at that point, all my witchy magicalness has come off, and I'm now back in my mundane state and starting to feel a bit more like myself and less magical, and that's part of the reason that I do that step. Another thing you might consider doing, guys, instead of summoning in just the elements as they are, is you might consider working with elementals or forces that represent them. So there's a number of ways you could do that. You could do this physically, so you could put physical representations of the elements or the forces you want to work with in the corners of your circle. So for earth, you might choose sand, dirt, flowers, a plant, or crystals. For air, you might choose a paper aeroplane. You might choose incense. You might choose feathers. For fire, you might choose a physical representation of that fire. So candles or matches or a lighter. You might choose crystals that have particular energies of fire or invoke that particular element. Symbols of fire if you wanted. That is completely up to you. Water, it might be shells, it might be a bowl of water or a chalice of water, it might be a drink, it might be wine, whatever you choose to work with. You could also choose to work with the archangels, so Gabriel, Oriel, Michael or Raphael, and summon in the angels. You might choose to work with the dragons, which is Fafnir, Cyrus, Grail and Nelion, and you might choose to summon them into your circle and work with dragon energy. You might choose to work with the Fae, calling in fairy representation, so the Undines, the Dryads, the Nymphs, the Silkies, or whatever you feel represents to you as the fairies. And there's a number of different ones there. I'm not going to go into them all, but it's quite a lot. I mean, gnomes for earth as well. There's so many. You might choose to work with the four winds. You might choose to summon in a animal that represents that element. So, you know, fire would be snakes or salamanders or perhaps the Komodo dragon. You might choose to work with certain fish or whales or dolphins for water. You might choose to work with certain birds for air, so like doves or peacocks, or, you know, the hawk or the eagle. You might choose to work with certain land animals for earth, so that might be bison, buffalo, deer. There's a number of different animals that you can choose to work with, and actually if you look at cultures as well, like shamanism and Taoism, working with druidry, some of them have very specific animals that you can call in to represent the cardinal quarters of your circle, so you can even look into those as well. And actually if you look into Chinese mythology as well, when they're casting their circle, they actually use different elements to us. They actually incorporate metal as an example, so again you might have to find a representation of that if that is the method that you like to work with. So there's no right or wrong here, and you can be as versatile as you want the circle to be. So the sky's literally your limit, guys, and the only thing that holds you back is your own creativity. So I definitely recommend researching this and figuring out what you like and what you feel you want to incorporate. So you can use symbols, you can use sigils, you can use physical representations, you can use candles in the colours of the elements if you wanted. You can just use colours. You can use, as I say, entities, other beings, other realmly guardians. But again, I just want you to think about this a little bit. So if you're choosing to work with angels and you say to yourself, I'm going to summon in the archangels to represent my quarters and protect me in my space, that's fine. But don't then go and summon in a entity or a god or a goddess as your main being that has nothing to do with angelic culture or spirituality, because you're crossing over too many energies then, and often crossing energies causes them to clash and it doesn't help your magic, it actually makes things worse. So you want to logically think about the steps with your circle, and again you should do this anyway, even if you're not casting a circle. If you like to work with the elements and you call them in, but then you calling in all these other things, you need to make sure they all work well together and that they're not going to cause chaos within your space. So I wouldn't choose to work with, you know, Norse deities if I hadn't cast the circle in a Norse style or incorporated elements that they recognise and that will work with them well. Same with, I wouldn't use you know, a dragon circle but then calling gods and goddesses, because dragons don't work with gods and goddesses. I would have to summon in dragon lords and ladies and the more powerful dragons to work with them, or my own personal dragons, rather than summon in a deity into a dragon circle. So again, thinking about what you're choosing a little bit and making sure you do your research is important, but you don't have to do any of that and think about that if you just stick to the main 4 elements. So if you summon in earth, air, fire and water, you can use those with anything. Universally, they're recognised in every single culture around the world, and spiritually in every single one of our spiritual witchy paths, they're all recognised. So they are the go-to, and they are the most useful and versatile out of all the different methods that you can choose. But if you want to, as I say, work with angels, think a little bit about what you want to summon in, what you want to work with is your main focus. Could be a slightly higher archangel, could be that you want to just summon in the god and goddess, and as you summon them in, use them to represent Akashic energy, which is above angels, which is fine. That all works well together. So again, understanding your pantheons, understanding what you're working with, and just doing a tiny bit of research, guys, and it's really not difficult, honestly. There's lots of information out there. So as I say, one of the things that you can do in your circle was you can work with one specific element. So if I'm going to do that, as I say, I will draw that specific symbol and I will summon in that one element and I will work with that, and then I'll release that. And how I do that is I would face the altar in the direction that matches that element. I will summon in that element and only work with that specific element. Another thing that you can consider doing as well, like I said, is envision the element around you when you're working with it. So if I'm going to work with earth and I cast an earth circle, I might envision a forest growing around me and I'm just in a little clearing in that forest, or I might picture mountains, or I might picture beautiful flowers. Sometimes, and I have done this, guys, I picture myself shrinking like Alice in Alice Wonderland, so all the flowers are huge around me, and that's actually protected me from outside forces and stopped them getting to me. So there's a number of different ways that you can do it. Just think outside the box. As I say, the sky is literally your limit, because it's all about your imagination, it's all about how much you visualise and how good you are at visualising as well. So practice makes perfect. So that's all I've got for you for now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, as always, give me that important thumbs up. Click the bell so YouTube will tell you when my next video comes out. If you did enjoy this and you want to check out some of my other social medias, all of the information is going to be in the description, but I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Pinterest. And if you're interested, guys, I do have a Patreon as well, so if you do choose to support my humble little channel, thank you very much in advance. I do appreciate every single one of you for your support. As always, be good to each other. I'll see you very soon. Blessed be, guys.